Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the September 11th, 2023 Berlin Board of Education meeting. We are going to start this meeting at 6:05 p.m., calling it to order, beginning with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Since today is September 11th, if we could just start out with a moment of silence, and then we'll begin. All right, thank you. So we are going to start out with committee reports. We have a new student board member, and we have your report. So if you guys want to kick it off and introduce yourself, that would be great.
Hi everyone, my name is Ian. I'm a senior this year at Berlin High School.
Hi, my name is Anusha, and I'm a junior.
All right.
All right, let's get started. So, on August 24th, teachers, students, and staff had the absolute joy of waking up bright and early to head back to their classroom for the 2023 to 2024 academic year. Many students are excited to see what this year brings at BHS as we continue to carry on many of our traditions, Senior Sunrise, Homecoming, and Spirit Week as well.
On August 31st, we had the joy of being asked to give a tour of BHS to Dr. Cardona, Governor Lamont, Commissioner Russell Tucker, Mayor Kaczynski, and Superintendent Benigni to highlight the beginning of classroom learning for the new year. We would like to extend our thanks to Superintendent Benigni, Mrs. Amenta, Mr. Testro, and Mrs. Daypre for giving us this wonderful opportunity. We were able to actively engage with our guests as we both discussed post-high school plans, scientific research, and the realities of being young adults in this day and age.
And then, as we all know, this coming Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we all have the Berlin Fair, which is a very exciting time for this time of year, if weather cooperates. So actually, Upbeat is a very big part in this town. It's also a very big part of the Berlin Fair. And then that weekend in total, we will be completing over 50 hours of community service. Just a little fun fact, in the fried dough booth and at the ticketing stations. And just as a reminder, our ride wristbands are still on sale up until the 14th. And that's all we have for today.
Thank you. Thank you for the update and welcome, Anusha. All right, any other committee reports? Have any committees met since?
Can I ask a question? How much are the red wristbands?
25.
25. Inflation, okay.
So at the high school, I believe it's $5 goes to Upbeat. At any other event, it's $3 goes to Upbeat.
So we should get it at the high school.
Yes.
Got it, all right, thank you.
Hey. And are they good for Friday night as well?
Yeah, Friday.
Okay. All right. Correspondence to the board.
Yes, I have one correspondence to the board. Dear Board of Education members and Mr. Benigni, thank you so much for the recognition of my retirement. A beautiful gift will be remembered in my years in Berlin. It has been an honor working in Berlin, and I will treasure the time spent there. Sincerely, Cindy Martin, Special Ed Supervisor, Secondary.
Okay. Moving on to audience of citizens. Is there anyone who would like to approach the board at this time? Okay. Moving on to our next item, personnel. Graham Seacamp, teacher at Griswold School, grade 4, has submitted his letter for intent to retire at the end of this school year. Do we have a motion for consideration?
I'll move to accept the retirement of Graham Seacamp, teacher of grade 4 at Mary E. Griswold School, effective June 30th, 2024. Also to thank him for the 26 years of service he has provided to the youth of Berlin and wish him good health and happiness in his retirement years.
Second. So motion by Adam, second by Carrie. Any discussion?
I'll just say it's hard to believe that he's been teaching for 26 years. I mean, Graham's, a very visible person in the community and at the gym. If he's not in the school, he's probably at the gym or with the kids or something like that, and very visible around town. So certainly wish him well. I know he's going to be looking to relocate out of Connecticut, but appreciate all of his years in Berlin.
Okay, we can move to a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The vote carries 7-0. Okay. Moving on to new business. We have an update on the summer programs. So I believe Linda Holy,
Yes. Linda and Michelle.
Linda and Michelle are coming up to present their end of the school year report. I'll take a hard copy.
Good evening, everyone. So we're here to discuss ESY, which stands for Extended School Year for students on IEP. So that's our version of summer school. Michelle and Cindy really put this program together. They work hard. It starts in
Putting it together? March, February,
March and February. And Michelle's put together a spreadsheet here for you over the past 3 years. So our program really hasn't changed. Our numbers do fluctuate based on the students who are recommended for ESY students, for ESY services. It's always, and I know questions always come up, staffing. We have to identify our staff much sooner than we know exactly how many kids will end up coming. And that's just something that happens. You can see of how many students were recommended, but this past year, 15 students decided not to show up. Sometimes we get the information and sometimes we don't. So we have to hire that staff knowing that we may have those additional 15 students.
And those 15 were people who said they were coming and then decided not to come for some reason. We do wean out many that were recommended that the parents say no ahead of time, so we can take that into consideration and into the count. But those 15 were counted on for coming to summer school.
We have about 440 students identified with IEPs. So this is typically the amount of students that are recommended every year for summer school. So these are those students that if they don't participate in summer school, it's going to take them a lot of time to catch up where they left off. So they will come back with regression, whether it's reading, math, social skills. So that's why it's important that they participate in our summer school program. I don't know if anybody has any specific questions.
I have a question. So, obviously, we had the height of 39 in 2021. People said they were coming and didn't show up. I'm assuming that's a little more COVID hangover.
COVID,
Yep.
yeah.
The 15 for this year, when they don't show up on day one, is there follow-up with them? And is it just going, they're not responding, or they're just saying, oh, we changed our mind?
We try to follow up. Sometimes we don't hear back. Sometimes they say or they'll call and say we changed our mind. They're not coming. Because we also have to plan for transportation. So some of those students were scheduled to be on a bus and then they're not there. So we try to find out. So sometimes we hear, sometimes we don't.
And there's probably about 20 to 30 other students that were probably recommended, but again, we have to bring it up at the PPT, and we already know the parents aren't going to send them. We wish more families would just say, you know what, we understand, but we're not going to send them. But we always have a handful of parents that just wait until last minute to tell us that. Any other questions, comments?
Are you continuing down, or were we just, are you going through anything else on this?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so. I mean, if the numbers are kind of consistent, again, it depends. Like, look at our preschool blast. We only had 2 students. Like, those are really significant needs.
Mm-hmm.
But then
Elementary.
they got bumped up to the elementary. So they're no longer in preschool, but they attended the elementary blast program. So that's,
for the prior year.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
And-
I have a question.
Sure.
So when you say that it's, we've allocated for what's recommended in terms of the budget, right, for the cost and for the staff, when the students don't come, what happens to the funding? Does it get carried over to the next summer school program, or does the money
Ashley could kind of help with that, that question. It's very hard to budget for summer school.
No, I understand
Yeah.
what you're saying, is that you have to, I would think it's probably state mandated that you have to
Yes.
make sure that you have proper staffing, right,
Mhm.
for, and then when these kids don't show up, is that money just carried over, like, again,
So-
I'm just trying to,
I can answer that for
Okay.
you. So when they do the staffing for the year, they look at what students potentially are eligible to
Right.
come, and that's what the money is based on, that's how they staff it.
right, what's
So on that
recommended.
first day, if the staff doesn't, if the students don't show up, that staff has already been hired, so they're then used, and Linda, you can speak to more.
All right.
They'll be utilized in other places.
Um,
So what happens is though, getting summer school staff, it's not as though they're contracted, there's not a contract to do the summer school.
Right.
So if we waited till the last minute and then all of a sudden a student didn't show up and then said to a staff member, well, you know, the student we had you working with's not coming, so now you don't have a summer job that you planned
Yeah.
on, that becomes difficult. So that's been an issue all along to say, this is what we anticipate, we have the appropriate staff to take care of the students. When they don't show up, we redeploy them, but you can speak more specific on how they're redeployed. Yeah.
Yeah, so sometimes I have to shift classes around and even them out. The other thing too, it's important to note that I don't officially hire the staff until at least the middle of May, as the information comes in. I always tell people it's going to be the middle to end to May before you hear that you definitely have a position. Because just for that exact reason, because I don't have all the final numbers. So we did something different this year where we sent out a Google form to families for them to respond to the request, and we seem to have gotten a better response back, or a quicker response back, with less that we had to follow up on. So that helped me be able to do things a little bit earlier. But it's not like I start planning in February, March, and are hiring then. I wait as long as I can possibly wait until someone basically almost says to me, I have to know if I have a job or I have to find something else, and then I have to start making decisions. But I really do hold it as long as I can, just for that reason. So, yeah.
Can I ask a question? I'm looking at the teacher costs. It's about a $20,000 difference, though it's only a difference of 3 teachers from last year. What created that big gap?
I'm guessing it's salary.
Seniority or?
No,
Uh,
they all get a flat rate,
Mhm.
so that doesn't impact it. So I'm not 100% sure, other than there's 3 more teachers, and one of them was in Blast too. So we have some staff that have teacher salaries that were, like our BC ABA, she acts as a teacher in the summer, but I also had another Blast teacher. So I had 3 people working in Blast for the summer, which last summer I only had 2, and that's 5 weeks, so that might have played part of it into it as well.
In 5 days.
And 5 days a week, yeah. So it's 20 hours.
The teacher rate is flat based on, not on the number of years' experience or degrees. So they're paid an hourly rate. So if there were additional hours, as Michelle's saying, for like the 5-day a week, there were more students in the 5-day a week, so more teachers at 5 days, that could fluctuate. Contractually, there's probably a 3% increase between the 2 years, plus the number of days that staff worked, where there were more students in the 5-day program than the 4-day.
And this year we also had in our related services, we had an OT, but we also had our OTR working to service the students, so we had an extra person in there as well. And even though we had 2 SLPs, it was more just because we had 2 SLPs that wanted to work, so they absorbed all the caseload that we normally would have had for 3 people. So their hours were pretty consistent from previous years. They covered the same number of kids, just 2 people did it. They each worked a little bit more. So that shouldn't impact the 2 to the 3 people.
If I do the quick math, last year to this year, last year's 19 teachers, if I just do the quick math, it's $3,948 per teacher for teacher cost. And this year it's $4,316 across the 22, which is almost a 10% increase in the average pay for those teachers. So I'm just, if it's a flat rate,
It's a flat rate. Ashley just shared, which I wasn't even aware of. The
Like-
OT and the OTR are getting paid their hourly per diem rate.
I just used the teachers line, 22 and 19. I understand that those other folks are in there, but
Oh, okay.
the numbers are essentially the same. In fact, you have less this year than last year of below the teachers line. So, if the para cost stayed basically flat, just piggybacking on Adam's question is the math doesn't work unless we increased the flat rate by almost 10%.
The flat rate wasn't increased by 10%. The flat rate's contractual, and it probably was 3%. 2?
That was a 3% increase
Right.
from last year for the hourly rate for summer school teachers. In addition to, I think you said 2 or 3 extra teachers?
3 extra teachers.
So it was a 3 plus 3%, practically be your 10%.
And the only other thing we could look at, if we want to get to that level, is to look at the number of teachers last year that worked 5 days
Right.
versus what worked 3. And I would bet that's the
So-
missing piece there, that there were more teachers that worked 5 days this year than there was
20
last year.
hours
The tw-
versus the
right.
12.
Right.
Right, and that was, it's an increase of 1 teacher.
What I can do if we could just do a report from last year, this year, by individual, not specifying name, and then I'll share it with the board, so you'll be able to see where the money, the difference came in.
Well, if you want to do that work from my perspective, that's fine. I always just express the concern that this program continues to grow at a cost value, but we're not growing the number of kids we're touching at the same time, right? So the cost goes up, but the number of students doesn't.
Right.
And in this particular case, the number of students is less. So that's always, it's my annual concern.
Right, because sometimes
It
it's.
comes
it's-
out every year.
It's hard to, unless you look at student by student, some of the needs of the students. You know, that's what's so hard about special ed, is what's the specific need of every student, because it's not black and white for some of the students' needs. You know, so one student may have a 2-to-1, so you're looking at 2 staff, or depending on how many hours that student has for academics or related service.
Right.
That's what makes it so hard.
But that doesn't play out in the information, the data that you give us is what I'm getting at. So anyway, we don't have to.
Yeah, we'll give the report so we can see exactly, but I think the question that's raised every year, and Linda and I spoke before the presentation tonight, and just said because each student requires different services, there's gonna be differences. So if last year, let's just say hypothetically, we only had 3 teachers that did, and it wasn't 3, that did the 5 days a week, and this year we had 6, the pay is gonna be elevated there. Or a student needed a 1-to-1, or a student needed different services at an increased number of hours, the number's gonna be elevated. But I think the easiest way to look at it is just to list out the 2, number of teachers, teacher 1 through, what was it, 20, it would just break down the whole thing, and you could see where the money's being spent. But I understand from a view that you're looking at, that it would seem as though the price does keep going up and the student population's about the same, but the needs of the student population is what can differ. So the only other thing we could do is, without, and I think it'd be tough to do, is start the listing disabilities of students and what they're needed. I think that's too far,
We
because
don't
it's
wanna
not.
get into the
Right.
weeds there. It's an overall observation, that's all.
Yeah.
I'm not asking you to do a whole lot more work. You guys want a great program, that's not the issue, we know we take care of the kids. I look at it from the perspective of, it goes up, but it's the same number of kids, but it grows exponentially. So,
And this year I exhausted every single para, and even some teachers worked as paras over the summer. They got the para rate, and I probably could have used some more. So, you know, we exhausted everyone we had and dispersed as best we could, so.
and same in all of the other
Right.
districts that I associate with too, so.
Right.
Yeah, it's not just here, it's everywhere.
Yep.
It's just,
But we have, you know, great staff who really do a great job during the summer, and some people who work regularly each summer, so it's great to have them to rely on.
I was just gonna say, is there a way, I don't know if this is tacky or not, but because you're having a difficult time knowing how much staff you're gonna need till the very end of when it gets started, is there a way to talk to the parents and sort of tell them what you're telling us, that, you know, there is a cost, and we really want to provide the best care for your kids and make sure that they're ready when the school year starts. So if you could maybe give them is there deadlines involved?
Oh,
I mean,
there are deadlines. There are deadlines, and then we follow up with phone calls when
and
they
still don't adhere to deadlines or anything. Yeah, that's not-
The vast majority do.
But
Oh, well, that's good.
I think correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the issue with having, you can set a deadline, but if in which case parents decide at the last minute or after the deadline that they want their child to attend summer school, you can't refuse them. You can't say, no, you're not allowed to
By
come.
law, you can't. No, I
Right,
understand
exactly.
that. No,
So
I was just
you would
trying to
hope that.
help to find a
Yeah.
solution for
Yeah.
why people
I
are
appreciate
being-
that.
But Gina, we do, like,
I'm
so
sure you
like,
thought of everything, huh?
these 15 students right here, we're going to have the discussion with the families when it's time, are you really going to send them? Because there is a
Yeah.
cost, I don't mind saying that.
Right.
We have to look at
You have to be
transportation, we have to
practical
look
with
at
that. Right.
hiring people. So we do make sure that we do it, but it's sometimes
And we
it
do,
doesn't
like, especially
work.
when students haven't been coming and we know, like, we need to know. So it's
Right.
okay if a parent says no, that we're not gonna send them, but
Right.
at least tell us.
Right, because it's
And then we
affecting
can
a
make
lot
note of
people.
it, right.
You know, it's a dominoes
Correct.
staff, teachers, like you said, people need to know for the summer what they're gonna do, so, anyway, thank you for that.
All right, no other questions? Thank you for the report. Thank you to the board for the questions. All right, now we are going to move it to the summer curriculum work update, and Lori Jerpin and Cara Watson will provide a brief overview of the work that was done to update the curriculum.
Thank you. So every year we have the opportunity to work with teachers to identify, and administrators, to identify what areas need improvement related to curriculum and instruction. And we send something out, we go through it, principals prioritize where they want to see work getting done, and then we're able to fund that throughout the summer. So we have a variety of projects that happen every single summer, and so we can just share some of the projects that we chose for this year.
So just a few highlights. Elementary, we always run curriculum through us, where we put proposals together for the projects, and then we have teachers sign up with us. We also have some elementary teachers who propose their own projects in addition, but generally speaking, literacy, math, science, things like that are always worked on. With some of the newer initiatives going on, as you've heard at the state, there's definitely some work around literacy and phonics instruction. We have some new resources we're using in math and science to help our curriculum grow, so we did some work around that as well. Also, at the elementary and middle level, one of the bigger things we were working on had to do with our tech integration. Obviously, with a lot of the changes, social media, AI, all of that, we wanted to make sure we're responsive and keeping up to date, so our tech integration did some work around curriculum on that. High school level, our RISE program, which if you saw the segment with our visit last week, we did visit the RISE program at the high school, and they've been updating some curriculum, including a new Spanish course for students who participate, which is fantastic. So that work had to be done this summer. Also, BHS, we changed the structure with the science courses with the block schedule, where some science courses no longer have separate labs, which actually allow students to take more electives. So they did some redesign with curriculum to accommodate that.
All of the schools identified teams who needed to do some ruler work, and so that helped them plan for the entire year for ruler. So that was an area that they did. The high school redesigned their advisory to the Red Sea block, and so they used some time to be able to work there. The capstone always looks at what they did, what the outcomes were for capstone, and what needs to change for the year forward. I think what's great about what we try to do in Berlin is really be responsive to what's happening in the classroom and making adjustments for the following year. Instead of, oftentimes, districts will be on a calendar where they have every 5 years, they'll look at literacy, every 5 years they'll look at math. And we may overhaul something in that amount of time, but we try to be responsive as, each and every year.
And keep our curriculum active so
Yeah.
that we're meeting the needs. And I'd say one other thing we should mention at the high school, we've had some nice adjustments in our tech ed department with
Yeah.
some new hires. And so we're really trying to move that curriculum forward with some of our FCS staff that we now have and our tech staff with Jeff Carpenter coming on, working with Laura Copa, as well as our business department with some of our newer courses and our firefighting and EMS. They also did some work this summer. So a lot going on there.
Any
That's
questions?
really it. It's a busy summer.
Always.
All right.
Before you go, some of the newer classes that we've had, I shouldn't say newer, but like the firefighter class,
Mhm.
I know, we've got the,
EMS?
EMS, thank
Mhm.
you. How are those going? Well attended? What's
Yes.
the
Yep,
numbers are looking good?
We have EMS running right now, and I believe we're running that in the spring. Firefighting is a spring course. We also started our CNA, which we have an instructor from Tunxus, and that's been going very well.
Did that start this semester?
It did, yes. So I've been in to visit, and it's been great so far. The instructor's very happy with the students. They'll start their clinicals probably in a month or so. And I don't know if you.
Yeah, so, so they're growing with popularity. I think, like anything, once word gets out amongst the student body and they start hearing from their peers that they're taking these classes and earning these accreditations, we're seeing that the next go around, the next registration process, there's more numbers, so it's definitely growing. I would say our newest course, which is the CNA course, just started, and so by design of the room and, accommodating all of the initial needs, now I can almost guarantee that each time we run it, it's gonna be, at full max. So, we're working out just a few logistical things in, collaboration with Tunxus, but overall the student experience is outstanding. EMS and firefighting are, maxed out as well, so I definitely see a growing trend.
Yep. We have quite a wait list actually for CNA, so excited for next year
Okay.
too.
When my daughter took it, she had to go to Tunxus, so the fact that you offered it in school is a nice thing.
It's a bonus.
Can I ask what data are collected from students that inform curricular changes?
So it's oftentimes collected through teachers, right?
So it's
And then,
performance data more so than
yeah, and there are certain teachers that kids always talk to. So at the high school, they always talk to the library media specialist when they go in there, and they give feedback, and she always passes that along, and she's not shy about asking, like, hey, so tell me what about X, Y, Z, so we're able to get that kind of information. Also, Millie works with the, students and gets feedback. There were several surveys sent out last year to get feedback from students, so.
about their
Experiences, things that they'd like to see
interests.
Yep,
changed,
perfect.
things that
Okay.
they'd like to continue,
Yeah.
yeah.
School counseling workshops as well.
Yeah, no, jump on in.
The school counseling workshops as well administer a series of surveys and feedback forms for students. Although maybe not curricular changes, we did facilitate a climate survey for students. So there's many venues in which student voice can come through. But I would say, performance data drives a lot of curricular change.
Yeah, okay. I'm just curious because we have, obviously it's wonderful to see the new or newer, or however we want to term these courses like the CNA or the firefighters. I know it's not new, it's been around, I get it.
It's been revamped though.
But we've heard voices from the community about some of these courses, and so I just wonder what students, in terms of their voices with respect to informing curricular changes, how that is factored in. So even as it relates to courses for college credit and what they're interested in. So the counseling department, I'm sure, would be well equipped to pull for that.
And the numbers, registration.
Yeah.
So I think that's very telling too. We have a number of, endorsed courses now with Southern, and so they're very high in demand, and students are, requesting those courses, and that's very telling of their success. So.
That's great. There are lots of options
Yes.
available through the college system, so.
Is the feedback and the climate and everything, is that being done at the middle school as well, or is that just at the high school?
Elementary, middle, and high school.
Okay,
For the climate surveys.
okay.
The only time we took a hiatus was during COVID with the climate
Yeah.
survey, so now we're back in play. If I can make one comment about the courses, I think it's important, because we had conversations, it was our first meeting. Every month I meet with the administrators at each building, and one of the concerns, looking at class sizes, we made cuts in core areas the last couple of years at the high school. So now we're looking at courses where we're up to 26 students in. So building these new courses, we're gonna have to take a look at where the interest is of the students, but also what we need to have in place so we can fill the core courses without having huge numbers in those classes. So it's definitely a balancing act, and I think the driver of student interest is very important. The other piece is that Millie, who we hired last year, did an exceptional job. I sent something to you last year about really working with students individually, and if they had an interest, she would search out for whatever resource was needed, whether it was taking them to a company, taking to professional, and finding almost an individual pathway that students had interest in. And I mean, she couldn't do it with everyone, but I would say she probably touched on, 50 to 60 students that she worked with individually. So it's a different layer than the counseling aspect. It's more of a career counselor. And the feedback that I had from Millie is that the students were really receptive to it and excited about it because they were unique learning experiences tailored to their interest. So, I don't know, Katie, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, I can say that Millie is already organized and is reaching out to the student body at large and working with me to find the best platform to gain feedback from students and offer them opportunities to attend various conferences. We're hesitant to call them field trips because we want them to be driven with purpose. She's put together a few precursor presentations that may take place before they leave. So if they sign up to go to an engineering conference, she's gonna bring them in the video amp, give them a lesson, what they're looking for and what they should be networking while there, and then go on the trip. So she is full steam, has a lot of great ideas, and is already, reaching out to students. So it's exciting. She settled in.
Any other questions from the board? All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item is the application for the 2023 CABE Board Recognition Award. It is enclosed in our packet on Schoology. To be eligible for the Board Distinction Award, which we are eligible for Level 2 recognition, a motion must be made at the board meeting to approve this application, and we have to submit the minutes with the application. Do we have a motion for consideration?
I'll move that the board approve the application for the 2023 Key Board Recognition Awards.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Adam, second by Carrie. Any discussion?
So I know, this looks familiar from last year, and this just being second year. So it's an annual thing, but if you could just, there's an award that goes with it. Can you just explain that a little bit? The acknowledgement that's given. I went through and I saw all the checks, of what the board has completed to get this award. I guess the question is, why do we do it?
Yeah. You wanna?
I could speak to it. So in the past, it's always been a recognition to say that the board is adhering to the standards set by CABE, which is Connecticut's Board of Education, the organization that represents all boards. In speaking with Patrice, Julie and I met with Patrice, of the 169 towns, I want to say 149, I think she said, 140 something is.
No, I think she said 150.
150 maybe now, because it's what's signed up. 150 are members of the organization. So to receive an award from the organization just means that this board is operating to a standard. That's really what and the standard is set by them, but it's a standard that you believe high-functioning boards should operate as. So that's really, so what do you receive for it? You receive a plaque, and there's a plaque that has, I think it's in the back, that has each year. So it's not as though, and typically if people are at the conference, they usually have you over for a picture with representatives from CABE, and that's how it's been in the past.
Every year when we do receive the award, we do send something to the citizens saying that we received it. I think it's, an opportunity to engage with the community about what the work the board is doing, showing that we are taking steps to,
The other thing beyond this award is that we receive recognition for, Nick and his team have received numerous recognition for our communications. Principals have received recognition for our communications, budget documents. Years ago, a school calendar that the middle school produced where it had just the way it was integrated, they thought was, exemplary compared to other schools. So it's to me, it's a sense of measuring what we're doing against a standard. That's really the best way to look at it.
When Brian and I met with Patrice from CABE, some feedback that I did give is, the checklist that is included on Schoology is something that I would, like to see much sooner than when it's released in July or August. So it will give us something to work towards collectively, kind of distribute the responsibilities, because there's certain things, there was one, a majority of the board attended the CABE CAPS convention within the past 12 months. Last year, we did not have that. However, if we know that's something that, is a priority for us to receive level 1 over level 2, if that's a priority of the board and the board is trying to achieve these things, then we need to know, a lot sooner. We can't, work towards achieving a goal without knowing what we're working towards. I think, another one, the board has used a CAVE facilitator within the past 12 months, or, other facilitator outside for a board workshop. So again, there's things, I think CABE can improve on, but, I think holding yourself to some type of standard shows that we're doing some of the work recommended, and,
Let's just speak to that. Based on the fact that this, we talked about this at the retreat, it's in the operational budget, we do pay a service to have it. Would we be able to set our own standards as in terms of what we expect? I mean, we're basically throwing out a benchmark, right, and saying, okay, in the eyes of the state of Connecticut, where do we fall as a board? Is that my understanding for clarification?
Yeah, I think that because it's the state agency for all boards of educations, and there's a national, and the National School Board Association, NSBA.
Nationally.
So nationally, so these standards are what CABE has put out, and I think as you read through them, as I've done, there's two ways to look at it. One is if you believe in CABE and you believe the standards are set, are meaningful, and shows that you're doing quality work, then you'd want to apply for the recognition. The other way to look at it is CABE, if you don't believe that these are the right standards, CABE sets these. So in order to receive recognition, you have to do what CABE is putting there. So it's you have to attend their workshops. You have to have one of their representatives come in and do a workshop. So so to me, it's two things. It's do you believe in CABE and what they're promoting? Then you want to get the recognition. Or if you don't think that CABE is that strong, then why be part of it? That's my take. And then why follow to get try to receive the recognition?
But I think to Gina's point, can we set our own? I think if this is shared out much sooner in the year, we as a board can say, all right, do we want to achieve level 1, level 2? If we're okay with level 2, what are some of the areas that are always, difficult or need to be delegated? If we want to push, and achieve the top award, the level 1, then what more do we need to do? And then really setting our own standards from there. So I think that's valid. I think there's a number of things that, it's good to see what we are doing, and what we're not yet doing, as we just went through our self-evaluation. But does that answer the question?
Yeah, I guess, I know it's basically national, that you're gonna, shine, as a board, if you're meeting these standards, which I think is a great thing to do, to have standards to look to better yourself as a board. But I was just thinking, we can look at all of this and consolidate it and say, we could do this ourselves. you know, if we really wanted to. Do we really need a hierarchy of someone else telling us what we need to be like? I don't know, just
Well, and
thinking
I
out of the
think,
box.
so next month Patrice will be at our meeting, and I think that's like another question that, you know, we can certainly ask, and I hope that, you know, everyone comes prepared to ask her questions at that meeting,
Yeah.
because that's gonna provide you guys with some information.
Go ahead.
Well, you can zoom in.
Something.
But I think the point you make is, are the standards that are there, you know, this document is printed, it's not as though we couldn't lift part of the standards from them, but you're not part of the organization if
Right,
doing it, so.
that's my point. I'm saying we can have those same standards and not have to pay an organization to
Right, and
give us a plaque.
that's what I thought you were trying to do.
That's all I'm trying to say. I'm
Yeah.
not trying to be derogatory, I'm just saying,
No, I don't think
as
it's
a matter of
derogatory at all, I
fact.
think it's a discussion that we've had about, is it relevant to be with
Right.
CABE or not,
Right.
and that's another piece of it.
I guess I think about the recognition, I sort of equate it to what we do either, you know, in public schools or in my profession. If you have a national organization that sets a certain standard and you're seeking either accreditation or program approval or something, that is sort of those are the aspirational goals, right? And so I think that is like the standardized, although it's not, measure to which everyone is comparing themselves. So you either tick the box or you don't. But to your point, you know, the ways in which we then interpret and enact those standards are for our own, that's for us as a board to decide. So I think there's a way to benefit from looking to a higher standard that's set for all, but then personalize it to what's relevant for our board purposes. So I think it's maybe both.
And I just think Patrice coming to the board to be able to answer questions, that's the executive director, she's been with CABE a number of years. I think that those are relevant questions to ask her, because those are questions that Julie and I asked. Why? Why is it important? What are we gaining from it? You know, and we can ask about the awards too.
You know, I think I may have shared this at the retreat or when Brian and I were meeting with Patrice. I can't remember, but, you know, one example I have is the club that I advise at my high school. You know, we have our state organization, our national organization, and, you know, we're one of the largest clubs at my school. And we each year receive the state award and the national award. And we're typically the only school in Connecticut that achieves the national award. In the moment, you know, it's a lot of work, and sometimes I even question, like, why am I leading the charge on this? But then when we get that award and can hang it up and share it with everyone, with, you know, the whole school, the community, so on and so forth, it defines the work that we do. I don't necessarily agree with everything. Sometimes I feel like it's checking a box, but then, you know, I think to show students the importance and value in following what's laid out by a professional organization, you know, and how to achieve that, I think it's important. So how does that translate to the board? I think it's very similar. Like, you know, there's these standards that are laid out, and you're either doing them or you're not. And I think it also goes into the pros and cons of being associated with a professional organization. So, do we have we had the motion, right?
Yes, we did.
Any other points to discuss? I think just before we wrap this up, just, you know, next meeting, be prepared with questions, because this is our opportunity to really engage with Patrice and ask her these questions, you know, as a decision will be made for the following year around the cost.
Should be at the next meeting.
Mm-hmm. All right, we can move to a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? 7-0. Moving on to item D, the selection of subcommittee to review the proposal in accordance with the board policy 1181, the naming, renaming of school buildings, components of buildings or school grounds. So last December, Christine Rose submitted a letter on behalf of the registered voters of town requesting that the Board of Ed considers naming the Berlin High School Band Room in honor of Paul Karam, sorry, I didn't want to say it wrong, and the McGee School Band Room in honor of Ronald Campanerio. Okay. Petitions with the signatures of 100 registered voters in accordance with the policy, which is enclosed and posted on Schoology, were submitted to initiate the action by the board. So at the January 9th board meeting, we discussed what spaces within the school buildings warranted naming of the board, and the board members were asked to email myself if they were interested in serving on the subcommittee. And tonight, we will select the subcommittee. So I will serve as an ex officio, the superintendent will serve. We need a member of the F&O committee, so Adam or Matt.
I'll do it.
You
got it.
You, okay.
I have Mr. Kieran and Mr. Camp. Looking
Perfect.
forward to being part of that.
Okay, perfect. So we'll have Adam. I do not recall receiving any emails from board members. We don't need another board member on, but if anyone would like to just speak up now. No? Good? Okay. We need an administrator, a teacher, a parent of a student enrolled in Berlin Public Schools, and a resident of the community who is not serving in one of the roles above. So, do you want to
I can
work
take
on
care of
that?
all this. Yep, I'll have all this for you tomorrow.
All right, any questions or comments about the subcommittee? All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Do we have a motion for consideration?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Do we have a second? Second. So motion by Melissa, second by Peter. Any discussion on the consent agenda?
Just a question.
Mm-hmm.
The Upbeat trip, Camp Jewel, are we comfortable? Everything's been, I know we've had some issues in the past, but we're good. Everyone feels comfortable.
We're not going back to the same camp.
I know, we're not.
This
I
one,
know
this
we're
one they
not. I know
went
this is
last
new.
year. This one they went last year.
Had the really fancy.
Yes, this one went very well last year. No bed bugs, very
like, what
clean.
did I
I wasn't gonna
miss?
say it on the record,
You're
okay.
good on the record, yes. They were very happy there last year.
Just
I
wanna
was
double check.
concerned that there was a different issue that I missed when you said that.
No, I think it was just the issue we had at
Yeah,
Previously,
the
the
Woodstock.
previous game.
Woodstock, right.
Yeah.
No, we're no longer utilizing Woodstock.
Okay. Then I have no further questions.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All right, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? 7-0. Okay, the last agenda item. Do we have a motion for consideration?
Move to adjourn.
Can I make one statement first?
Oh, wait, hang on. Brian has to make one
Rescind my
statement.
motion.
Sorry, just give me 1 second. In front of you, I was contacted by one of the board members regarding tickets for the Berlin Fair. The Lions do donate tickets upstairs to the town workers, and they were nice enough to give me tickets for all of you. So there's 2 tickets in front of all of you for the Berlin Fair. They're complimentary from the Lions Club. Just wanted an opportunity to thank them for all they do for the schools and the community. So,
That is very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you to the Lions.
All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
Do we have a second? So the motion by Adam, second by Carrie. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? 7-0. Thank you. The meeting is adjourned at 6:53. Have a great night, everyone.